Just Hockey Show. I'm the Trev. That's too sweet. Anyway, remember all those predictions I made for the playoffs? Some people thought I had no idea what I was talking about. I'd like to go over them. It's that time of year where I go over my playoff predictions and see for myself how out to lunch I was. And I mean, to be perfectly honest, I didn't do too bad. I think this is my best prediction year ever. I mean, not so much in terms of games played, but at least in teams that I picked that won. That's the biggest point. But we will go over the ones I picked with the games played as well. But either way, this is my playoff prediction reaction. Let's talk about it. Starting in the quarterfinals, Dallas, Vegas. So one of the ones I actually called dead on the money. Dallas won it in 7. I picked Dallas to win in 7. It was a good series, pretty even matched. I mean, the fact that it was 2-2 after 4 games, and they were all pretty close games too. So that was 1. Now I picked Colorado in 7 to win. Colorado won it in 5. I gave Winnipeg too much credit. I mean, after game 1, it was all Colorado, and here's hoping Winnipeg can improve on that, because I mean, if they wanted to, they could be a hell of a playoff team. Just saying. Another one I called right on the money. Vancouver in 6. Vancouver won it in 6. I mean, they could have just as easily won it in 5. But, hey, I'm glad they took it to 6. At the same token, I thought Vancouver was going to do a lot more damage. And at the same token, I thought Demko was going to come back healthy. That didn't work. Another one that I called dead on the money. Edmonton in 5. Edmonton won it in 5. This one, there was no other way to call it. I mean, it was always going to be Edmonton beating LA in 5. Some people were generous, gave them 4. I thought, no, Edmonton's going to at least lose 1. That's what they do, and that's what they did. But again, they won in 5. That's all I care about. Overall in the Western Conference, I was 1,000%. I went 4 for 4 in the West. Let's talk about the East. So first and foremost, I didn't do nearly as good in the East, and this was the one that I got wrong. Silly me thinking Tampa was going to beat Florida in 7. Yeah, no, Florida beat Tampa in 5, and that shouldn't have been a complete surprise. I mean, I was thinking Tampa was still a contending team, but at the same token, not as much maybe. But who knows? Off-season's a completely different story. Right. This is the third one I called right on the money. And you can never go wrong saying Bruins in 7, because 9 times out of 10, maybe even 9.5 times out of 10, that's usually what happens. And this year is no exception. But you know the old phrase in Toronto, it's always next year. So the 5th one I called right on the money, and again, this was the only way it was ever going to go. Washington looked like the proverbial deer in the headlights playing the Rangers, and I don't know if it was because of the fact that the Rangers are the President's Trophy champs, or Washington's just not the Washington it used to be. And I mean, to be fair, Washington hasn't won a series since they won the Cup. At the same token, the President's Trophy is supposed to jinx you, not advance you. That point when, two things like that meet and something has to give, it's usually going to be the President's Trophy champs. And there's silly me thinking this one was going to go 6, but Carolina won it in 5. Rather convincingly, I might add. Now, as far as teams in the East goes, I picked 3 of the 4 teams in the East to put me in an overall 7 for 8 record in the Western Conference. So not bad. Did I say the Western Conference? Because I meant both conferences. 7 for 8 between the 2 conferences. So now we go into the semifinals. Now this one was the 6th one I got right. Right on the money. Picked Dallas in 6. Dallas won it in 6. Thanks in no large part to the wife's boy. That game 6 double overtime scorer, Matt Duchene. What a way to slay the beast. I mean, the team that drafted you, and you knocked them out of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. In double overtime. In an elimination game. That was a great series. It was a great story to go with the series, but oh, it was amazing. Now I picked the Oilers to win in six. They won in seven. And what the sucky part of this whole series was, the only time a team won back-to-back games was Game 6, Game 7, when the Oilers won both of those. Other than that, it was Vancouver, Edmonton, Vancouver, Edmonton. It was really hard to get emotionally invested in this series when it kept going back and forth and tying up. But it was all right for what it could have been. I mean, it just meant the Oilers were going to the conference finals again. Now with that conference final, that put me at 2 for 2, or that conference semifinal left me at 2 for 2 with an overall record of 10-12. But let's talk about the East. Now this one was a little hard to watch because I had either of these teams go into the Stanley Cup final. But for this series, I picked the Rangers to win it in 7. They won it in 6. And so that wasn't all too bad. I'm curious what Carolina's going to look like next season. I'm curious what the Rangers are going to look like next season because, I mean, they got pretty damn close. And, I mean, given how long they've been rebuilding, both teams, not just one or the other, both teams have been rebuilding and putting in the right tools and the right pieces and getting so very close yet so very far. And something's got to get them over the hump. Curious to see which team gets further first. Silly me, thinking the Bruins were going to beat the Panthers. I picked the Bruins to beat them in 6, obviously. That didn't happen. The Panthers won in 6, but it's not to say the Bruins weren't up to the challenge. They just didn't meet the challenge. They came close a couple times, but silly me. Silly anybody thinking the Bruins could have beat the Panthers. After the Eastern Conference, I went 1 for 2, so now my record is 10 for 12. Conference finals, that's what bit me. But let's talk about it. Now you're going to hear me talking a lot about Game 3s here pretty quickly, but silly me thinking Dallas was going to beat the Oilers in 6. It went the other way. Actually, I picked Dallas in 7. Oilers won it in 6. So I got that one wrong. But again, it was like the Vancouver series went one way, the other way, one way, the other way, the other way. It's like, again, but it just seemed like in Game 3, Dallas just stopped playing. And just, I don't know if they petered out, got tired, I don't know, but they were done after Game 3. So that meant Edmonton was going to the Stanley Cup. 8th time in team history. Last time they went was 2006. Going up against the East. Let's talk about that. Again, silly me thinking the Rangers were going all the way to the Cup. But again, in my mind, at the beginning of the season, or the beginning of the playoffs, sorry, I thought the Rangers were going to be one of those teams. So I picked them to beat the Panthers in 6. Turned out to be the other way around. Again, Game 3, Rangers just fell apart. Panthers took full advantage. So the Panthers went to the Cup back-to-back years. 3rd time in team history, right? Never won a Cup. Let's talk about them Cup finals. So again, it's had no business going 7, but I mean, we got to see McDavid break a Gretzky record. Most assists in the playoff. Now, with the record now is 34. And again, no business going to 7. Florida had them in the scope, 3-0. All they had to do was win Game 4 in Edmonton. And that didn't work. So Game 5. Well, Game 5 didn't work. So Game 6. Well, Game 6 didn't work. Edmonton became the first team since 1945 to force a Game 7 down 3-0, looking to be the first team since 1942 to win the Cup after being down 3-0. But, well, that didn't work. In a repeat of 2006, Game 7, Oilers lost 2-1. Sam Reinhart scored the series winner. Florida has its first Cup in franchise history, the 3rd Cup in the last 5 years for the state of Florida. You gotta remember, Tampa won it back-to-back 2020 and 2021. And the fact that they won the year after they lost, I mean, that's, you learned something, you really did. So I picked Florida in 5, Florida won in 7. So as far as my overall predictions in 2024 Stanley Cup Playoffs, I went 11 for 15. So let's do the math on that one. I'm at 73%. So when you're right 73% of the time, you got to be wrong 27% of the time. And I know I butchered that line completely, but if you know where I got it from, then hey, my hat's off to you, because I've been waiting all of 3 weeks to use that line. Either way, like I said, probably one of my best prediction years ever. At least in my memory, that is slowly fading. That I'm pretty sure I haven't done this good in the last couple years. I mean, last 2 years in a row, I've picked the wrong team to win the Stanley Cup. So this year is kind of a bit of a validation for me. But I think I did well. I'm looking forward to the regular season to start, that way where I can get to the division predictions, because we all know how well my division predictions work. But feel free to give me your results. I'd love to know how well you did, or how soon your bracket was busted. See if we can actually say, hey, we had identical records, or hey, my record sucked. But hey, again, don't take my picks to Vegas. I'm not responsible for your gambling. But hey, if my predictions help win you some money, you're welcome. It's another one of them Chess Hockey shows. I want to thank you for tuning in. Don't think I don't appreciate the gesture, especially if you've made it to this point. And if you have made it to this point, I am incredibly thankful for that. You know what? You deserve a thumbs up from me. But if you're here, if you made it to this part, or even just want to say hey, or if you're digging what I'm doing, give me the thumbs up. I'll greatly appreciate that too. If you want to, the red button that says subscribe, you should check it out. You should subscribe to this channel. It'll make you feel good. It'll make me feel good. It'll help out my algorithm, and we're on that mad dash for 500. So let's make that happen. I got one more to film tonight. I got a couple on the slate for tomorrow. I got a couple on the slate for Thursday. I got like 5 on the slate for Thursday. And then the draft is Friday. But either way, in the meantime, and in between time, be looking for more and Trev. Later.